July 17, 1996. The summer air around New York City is hot and heavy with humidity. At John F. Kennedy International Airport, a Boeing 747 TWA Flight 800 sits on the tarmac preparing for its long journey across the Atlantic. The flight is scheduled to depart New York, stop in Paris, and then continue on to Rome. On board are 230 people, 192 passengers, 18 crew members, and 20 off-duty TWA employees traveling to work the next leg of the route. For most of those passengers, this was supposed to be an ordinary evening flight. Instead, it became the beginning of one of aviation's most infamous tragedies. At 8:07 p.m., the engines roar to life. The massive 747 slowly taxis to its assigned runway. The skies are mostly clear and everything appears routine. At 8:19 p.m., Flight 800 takes off, climbing steadily into the night sky. Air traffic controllers, who monitor every plane in their sector, watch its progress on radar. Each aircraft is identified by a call sign, while onboard transponders send back precise information about altitude and position. For the controllers, TWA 800 is just another blip on the screen. At 8:30 p.m., clearance is granted for the plane to climb from 13,000 to 15,000 feet. Flight engineer Richard Campbell adjusts the thrust, and the jet begins its ascent. But just over a minute later, at 8:31 and 12 seconds, something goes terribly wrong. The transponder makes one final ping, then disappears. In less than a second, TWA Flight 800 vanishes from radar. Air traffic controllers immediately try to reestablish contact. They radio the flight crew again and again, but there's only silence. The controllers begin reaching out to nearby aircraft for visual confirmation. The first response comes from another pilot flying over Long Island. His voice is urgent. He reports seeing an enormous explosion in the sky at roughly 16,000 feet over Long Island Sound. Moments later, other pilots echo the same observation. A fireball has erupted in the night sky, scattering burning debris as it plummets toward the ocean. On the ground, residents across Long Island also witnessed the event. They describe a huge ball of fire followed by streaks of glowing wreckage falling into the water. Emergency calls flood in. Within minutes, rescue vessels of all kinds, Coast Guard ships, fishing boats, police launches, rush toward the crash site. Some arrive so quickly that wreckage is still raining down around them. A surreal and terrifying scene. It soon becomes clear that the unthinkable has happened. TWA Flight 800 has exploded in midair, killing all 230 people on board. The search and recovery effort is enormous. Divers, salvage teams, and Navy ships work tirelessly to retrieve wreckage from the seafloor. Over the following months, nearly 95% of the aircraft is painstakingly recovered from the depths of the Atlantic. Each twisted piece of metal is cataloged and reconstructed inside a massive hangar. Investigators hope that by rebuilding the jet, they can determine what caused it to break apart. At first, suspicion falls on terrorism. The mid-1990s were marked by a heightened fear of airline bombings, especially after incidents such as Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland. The FBI quickly joins the investigation. Laboratory tests reveal minute traces of explosive residue on a floor panel from the recovered wreckage. This finding fuels speculation that a bomb might have been placed on board. The possibility of a terrorist attack dominates headlines, and investigators explore every lead. But soon another disturbing possibility emerges. While examining the reconstructed fuselage, one investigator notices unusual damage. The center wing fuel tank appears to have bowed outward, as though it had exploded from within. Aircraft fuel tanks are inherently dangerous spaces, always filled with flammable vapors. For safety, they are designed to be isolated from any potential ignition sources. But if a spark somehow ignited fuel vapor inside the tank, it could cause a catastrophic explosion. Attention turns to the electrical systems inside the 747. Fuel quantity sensors, wiring harnesses, and circuits all run near or inside the central wing tank. Over decades of service, wiring insulation can degrade from constant vibration, pressure cycles, exposure to salt, and cleaning chemicals. Maintenance records for Flight 800 reveal prior anomalies in the electrical system. Investigators begin to suspect that frayed or damaged wires may have created a short circuit, sending a high-voltage arc into the tank. If that spark met the fuel vapors, the result would have been instant and devastating. the very scenario investigators believe unfolded that night. The National Transportation Safety Board eventually concludes that the most likely cause was an explosion of fuel-air vapors in the center wing tank, triggered by a short circuit in the electrical system. Yet while this explanation fits much of the evidence, it is not absolute. There is no single piece of proof that identifies the precise wire or spark. Instead, it is a conclusion reached by eliminating other possibilities. For many, that uncertainty is unsatisfying. Families of the victims, members of the public, and even some investigators struggle with the lack of definitive answers. The traces of explosive residue, while explained as contamination from prior military training, still leave lingering doubts. Conspiracy theories thrive, with some insisting the plane was shot down by a missile or sabotaged deliberately. But the official record stands: a fuel tank explosion, most likely caused by faulty wiring, brought down TWA Flight 800. The crash of TWA Flight 800 sent shockwaves across the United States and around the world. The loss of 230 lives in such a sudden, violent way left families devastated. Many of the passengers were young students headed to Europe for summer trips, while others were business travelers, families on vacation, and crew members who had flown the route countless times before. Vigils were held on Long Island's beaches as grieving relatives stared out over the ocean where the wreckage lay. For the U.S. government, the investigation became one of the most complex and expensive in aviation history. The FBI initially treated the case as a criminal matter, deploying hundreds of agents to search for evidence of foul play. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, meanwhile, focused on mechanical and technical possibilities. At times, tensions flared between the two agencies, each with different priorities and methods. The FBI sought evidence for prosecution, while the NTSB sought causes to prevent future accidents. As the months dragged on, frustration grew. Media coverage fed speculation, with nightly news segments dissecting every new lead. Witness testimony played a major role in shaping public perception. More than 200 people on the ground had reported seeing streaks of light in the sky before the explosion. Many described it as a missile-like trail, fueling theories that Flight 800 had been shot down, either accidentally by the military during a training exercise or deliberately by terrorists with a surface-to-air weapon. The missile theory gained significant traction. Some experts argued that the eyewitness accounts were too consistent to dismiss. Others countered that what people saw could have been the burning jet fuel streaming from the aircraft after the initial explosion, creating the illusion of something rising toward the plane. In 1997, Pierre Salinger, a former White House press secretary, publicly claimed that the U.S. Navy had accidentally shot down the plane during exercises. His statement caused a media storm, but was quickly discredited by investigators. Still, the idea stuck in the public imagination, becoming a cornerstone of conspiracy theories that persist to this day. Another theory pointed to a terrorist bomb, citing the explosive residue found during testing. However, the FBI later explained that the aircraft parts tested had been contaminated by bomb-sniffing dogs during prior training exercises. Traces of explosives could have transferred from that training, leaving misleading results. By the year 2000, after 4 years of meticulous investigation, the NTSB released its final report. It concluded that the probable cause was the explosion of the center wing fuel tank, triggered by an electrical short circuit. The report also highlighted broader issues within aviation: aging aircraft, deteriorating wiring insulation, and the risks posed by fuel vapors. As a direct result, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, mandated new safety measures, including systems to reduce flammable vapors inside fuel tanks. Even so, the official conclusion failed to silence doubts. Documentaries, books, and online forums continued to question whether the government was hiding something. Families of the victims were divided. Some accepted the NTSB's findings, while others believed the truth had been covered up. The tragedy became a focal point for debates about government transparency and the reliability of official investigations. Beyond the technical and political aspects, the human cost remained the most heartbreaking. Each victim had a story: students from Pennsylvania traveling to France for a cultural exchange program, honeymooners beginning a new chapter of their lives, parents visiting children overseas. Memorials were erected on Long Island to honor them, ensuring they would never be forgotten. The tragedy also reshaped aviation safety culture. Airlines and regulators around the world became more vigilant about aging aircraft maintenance, fuel system safety, and electrical wiring inspections. The crash of Flight 800, while devastating, contributed to preventing future disasters by highlighting overlooked risks. In the decades since, the legacy of TWA Flight 800 has remained complicated. For aviation experts, it represents one of the most thorough, yet inconclusive investigations ever conducted. For conspiracy theorists, it is a case study in mistrust of government narratives. And for the families, it is an eternal wound, a nightmarish reminder of lives cut short without warning. Today, more than 2 decades later, the reconstructed wreckage of the aircraft is preserved at the NTSB Training Center in Virginia. It is used to educate future investigators, serving as a grim but vital teaching tool. Walking among the twisted metal, students and experts alike are reminded that every rivet, every wire, and every panel tells part of a story that must be understood if lives are to be saved in the future. TWA itself no longer exists, having merged into American Airlines in 2001. But the memory of Flight 800 remains tied to the brand, forever associated with tragedy. Each anniversary brings renewed attention, with survivors' families gathering to honor the dead and to reflect on unanswered questions. In the end, the story of TWA Flight 800 is not just about an accident. It is about the fragility of human life, the mysteries that linger even after exhaustive investigation, and the way tragedy can ripple across generations. The explosion in the sky over Long Island remains a defining moment in modern aviation. A stark reminder that even the most advanced technology can fail, and that sometimes, despite all efforts, the truth may never be fully known.